no one's going to be sort of outcompeted by the AI itself. You are going to be outcompeted by firms that really adopt this aggressively and sort of bring that future forward. And so I would just be really eager to try as many things as you can find and start with your simpler clients, start with your sort of more tech forward, risk taking clients, and see how much of their process you can automate.
Are you an accountant with a continuing education requirement? You can earn free NASBA-approved CPE for listening to this episode. Just visit earmark.app in your web browser, take a short quiz, and get your certificate. Welcome back to the Earmark Podcast. I'm Blake Oliver. Today, we're tackling a big claim, an AI-native general ledger that says it can automate most bookkeeping work without losing control or trust. My guest today is Jeff Seibert, co-founder and CEO of Digits. Jeff recently unveiled Digits' autonomous GL and new accounting agents, and we're going to unpack how they work, where the human stays in the loop, and what a smart first pilot looks like for your firm. If you've wondered whether to switch from a legacy general ledger or how to price an AI-powered client accounting services offering, this episode is for you. Jeff, thanks for joining me.
Blake, it's so great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Jeff, what is an autonomous general ledger?
Yes, so we started this company in 2018. It's been a long journey with the goal of reimagining accounting in the age of machine learning. And that's the underlying technology. AI, of course, as a term didn't really exist in 2018, but it is fundamentally machine learning. And what really struck me was the opportunity to try to automate just all of the tedium that goes into the core accounting workflows, particularly during the monthly close. And so the goal with the autonomous general ledger is to automate 90+% of the bookkeeping, of the statement reconciliation, of the flux analysis, the sort of insight generation, the report generation, so that you can focus on the actual value added work that really helps your clients, and the tedium is sort of taken care for you.
So how is this different than a traditional GL like QuickBooks or Xero?
Yes, so it is a fundamental architecture difference. And this might get slightly technical for a moment, but the way to think about QuickBooks, Xero, even all the way up to NetSuite, Oracle, et cetera, is they're all fundamentally relational databases. They were all architected 20 to 30 years ago, and they treat each transaction as basically a row in the database, and they treat it as text. And so let's say your client took an Uber ride. QuickBooks is just going to see UBER. It just sees text. It sees whatever you type in. And so you type in those transactions, and you've probably noticed they sort of sit there in the database. And then when you run a report, it prints that data back out to you, and of course aggregates it by your chart of accounts, et cetera. But it doesn't understand the data. It doesn't know what UBER is. And so Digits is a fundamentally different technical architecture. We use what's called a vector graph data model. And this means everything is an object. And so Uber is an object, Airbnb is an object, your marketing category, expense category is an object. So is travel, your bank accounts are objects. And so through this, we're basically able to map the flow of money through each business. And that allows the AI to build what's called a semantic data model, a semantic understanding of the money flow. And that's how it can get so accurate at booking transactions. And so the best way to summarize it, it's a data architecture difference that's pretty fundamental to how the GL works.
So we've gone from a relational database to a vector graph data model where each of these vendors is an account part of this too? They're all objects?
Yes. So okay. Think about your vendors, your customers, your bills, your invoices, your chart of accounts, and then each transaction is basically a vector, a connection in that graph. And so then you can build a clustering, a mesh network of all the financial transactions in that business.
This sounds a lot like how like an LLM is structured. I don't know much about it technically, but I know there's vectors are involved and sort of like each of these concepts, like the words in an LLM are like connected in space in a way.
Yes.
Like that is this similar to that?
It is very similar to this. So in LLMs, they tokenize the input and output. So each word is converted into tokens. Each token could be a short word or a piece of a big word. And those are converted into what are called vector embeddings, which are literally just numbers. And so it's plotted in n-dimensional space. You can think of your typical 2D graph with a line on it, but in n dimensions. It's sort of hard to think about. We use a very similar model here. And so we're able to convert each transaction into this vector embedding. And that allows the AI to understand how it sort of lives in that n-dimensional space. I realize this gets a little weird.
Well, maybe you can help make it real for us, like by walking us through a transaction. You mentioned
Yep.
Uber,
Yep.
so let's say I'm going to a conference. I'm going today to Seattle
Mm-hmm.
for
Yep.
work, and I'm gonna use an Uber. I'm gonna take an Uber to the airport.
Yep.
So I spend that on my spend card. Like, how does that show up in digits? It compared, and like, let's compare it to a typical GL.
Yeah. So in a typical GL, right, you would connect your credit card, it would come into the bank feed, it would then sit in the bank feed for your review, or perhaps you've set up a manual rule that would then book it to travel, let's say, right? In Digits, we also connect live to all your banks and cards. The transaction comes in, there is no bank feed and there are no rules, right? What happens is the transaction is then basically processed and understood by the AI models. And we spent 5 years training these models. So I built our machine learning team way back in 2020. And we have trained all these models internally on 170 million plus transactions, almost like $1 trillion in real small business financial activity. And these models basically understand all of these transactions and how they were booked before. So when Uber comes in, it converts that Uber transaction into this vector embedding, and then it looks into this model and it's like, oh, what is that? How has it been booked previously? And then what is similar to it? And so what's really fascinating is the emergent patterns here. So when you have that scale of data and you see how everyone has booked Uber before, you start to see, oh, wait, Uber and Lyft are often booked the same way. And so the model starts learning and it's like, oh, actually, Uber is very similar to Lyft. And so if it sees Lyft in your accounting for this client, it then knows how to book Uber. And so you can sort of look at this pattern detection that it starts building. So the way to think of digits, I can pause there for a moment.
Oh yeah, yeah. So because of the vector graph data model, Lyft and Uber are similar vendors. The model understands this, or Digits
Yep.
understands this.
Yep.
And I think the thing that is big here for me is that in a traditional relational database like QuickBooks, part of the reason that Intuit struggles to do this kind of work for us is that each client company is its own thing.
Yes.
There's no visibility across all of these relational databases to learn
Yep.
from, right? But Digits is like all the transactions for every company. It can learn from all of them and apply those learnings to your company.
So
Is that
that's
right?
exactly right. So the
Okay.
way to think of digits is a layer cake. And so it's not just one model. We actually have different tiers of models that allow us to be sort of as smart as possible in the moment. So the top tier of model is trained on each individual client's books. And so if a transaction comes in that that client has seen before, it's effectively perfect because it mimics exactly what was done with that transaction before. And you never need to create rules. None of this is manual. It's just fully automatic. If that transaction has not been seen by that business before, we then have our global model, which trains across our entire data set. And it looks at, oh, how did another business in digits book that transaction? We then translate that into the chart of accounts for the client in question. And so Digits works with any arbitrary chart of accounts. You don't need to standardize anything. That's what you get from our global data set. If we have never seen the transaction before, it's completely novel. Let's say a business just opened down the street. We then fall back to an LLM to basically go and this will get into the agents, I'm sure, in a few minutes, to go and build a dossier on that transaction. So it's like, what would you do as an accountant? You would probably Google it. What do our agents do? They literally Google it. And they research the transaction, build a dossier about it, and then we give that to an LLM to do what's called zero shot classification on that transaction. And so it has no prior history of it, but it makes the best guess. And
It
so
gets
that's sort of
the
the fallback.
it has your chart of accounts.
Yep.
and it builds that, it does that web search that
Yep.
I would do as an
Yep.
accountant, and it takes the information and it finds the best fit expense account.
Exactly. Exactly.
I got it. Okay, so it's basically working the same way a human bookkeeper would work.
Yep.
Um, so that takes us through to the categorization stage of this transaction life cycle. Let me ask you one more thing, like before we move on to reconciliation. When we're categorizing, a lot of times even the web search doesn't give us enough information. For instance,
Right.
uh, I'm going to Seattle for a particular event, and maybe the nature of that event determines how we're going to categorize this Uber transaction.
Right.
How do you get all that context into Digits AI that is not there? Like a bookkeeper might have to ask me, like, what event are you going to, or look on my calendar or something like
Totally.
that. How do you handle that?
Yeah. So two different ways. So we do allow there to be additional context stored on the client that the LLM has access to. And so it's like, oh, where is this client based? What type of business are they in? And so on. And this is just plain text. This isn't like some big profile you need to fill out. That allows you to sort of bias the LLM towards booking it correctly. But you're exactly right. Your example is perfect. Some things like you just don't know. It's something unique to the business that they did that month, and it's not going to know that. And so the way this would show up is if there's a transaction in the business's history that's booked in different places, right? It's uncertain, it moves around, then our models are going to be low confident in their booking. Anything that's low confidence, we immediately throw out and it's put in the inbox. And so then you, as the accountant or the client, can go in and go through the inbox and book it how you want to.
And what percentage of transactions are going into that inbox?
So right now, about 4 to 5%, relatively
Okay.
small.
That's pretty good because I'm thinking back to when I had my cloud-based accounting firm. We were able to use rules to automate a lot of this coding, but it was like 80% maybe.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
So
Exactly.
you've gotten it down to like four. Did you say 4 or 5, 4%?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can share some news here. So previously published our benchmarking. Digits was 93.5% accurate in the spring. As of the August close, we hit 96.5. So we're continuing to march up.
And is that calculated based on when people change what Digits did?
Exactly.
Got
Yep.
it. Okay, so 93% of the time, Digits codes it and it doesn't ever get changed.
That was the spring number. Yeah.
Spring number.
As of August, 96.
96. Okay. And it's probably just going to go up from there because these models keep getting better and better.
Yep.
And I imagine it's getting easier to connect the external sources for context. Like I noticed that in ChatGPT now, I can connect my Google Calendar.
Totally. Yep.
So,
So we can keep bringing in more and more context. Exactly.
and
This is the right way to think about it. Basically, if you're able to share the context with Digits, it can get really, really smart. And
yeah.
so our goal is to just keep adding additional layers of context.
So this is exciting because I've always thought of AI powered bookkeeping as limited in the sense that, sure, it can do standard bookkeeping
Hmm.
with a standard chart of accounts for a typical business, like a startup, for instance.
Yep.
Startups are pretty easy, right? It's just like cash burn, a lot
Right. Exactly.
payroll, standard expenses, a lot of SaaS.
Yep.
It's not complicated. And so all these startups start to do bookkeeping,
Yep.
and then they go and they try to serve other businesses like construction companies, and they realize, or nonprofits
Right.
where it's fund accounting, and you realize, oh, this is way more complicated.
Totally.
But I could see with the context of like a construction company's projects that they're working on, that the
Yep.
AI could like figure out, if it has enough context, okay, this purchase was for this project.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly. And you hit on all the hard examples. I will say each additional percent gets harder and harder for us to achieve. But I think just long term, directionally, you can imagine if you're able to bring in all that context, it's theoretically possible.
that's where you're going.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
right now, like what are the businesses that work best on Digits?
So, I mean, you hit it. If your business is straightforward, digital based, right? Like relatively reliable month to month, we have many examples in our system where Digits is 100% perfect every single month. And like that's the dream, right? Because everything's predictable.
Mm-hmm.
We're currently really pushing to improve our support for nonprofits. We're bringing in other sort of sources and connectors and so on. And so we'll just keep expanding. We'll have more to announce at the end of this year on sort of new verticals that we support.
Okay, so great fit for standard cash basis expenses. I'm not doing a lot of project tracking. Like you've nailed that.
Yep.
And we're gonna start doing those. I guess one way to think about them is just additional dimensions in the GL. That's how
Correct.
I've always
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got it. Beyond just expense accounts. What about? Well, I want to talk about journal entries and stuff, but I think when we talk about agents, we'll get there. Let's go through this. Let's not get sidetracked. Let's keep going through this transaction lifecycle. So we've got the Uber transaction. It's come through into Digits and it's been categorized. And my business, because I'm a consultant essentially, is pretty simple. Yep. So we assume it's gone to travel expenses. We're good. What about like reconciliation? Because categorization is just one part of the process.
Yep.
The reconciling may take, these days it definitely takes more time. So like how is Digits different than a traditional GL when it comes to actually closing the books?
Yes, great question. So reconciliation is the other major time sink in the close. And this has been our major effort this year. So you can already reconcile the accounts in Digits. You can go and mark them and check everything off and so on. It matches. What is coming shortly, as in the next few weeks, I'll sort of tease it here, is completely automated reconciliation. So we go and pull the statements from the banks automatically if the bank supports that. If your bank doesn't support that, you can just drag and drop the PDF onto Digits. You don't need to worry about converting to a CSV or anything, whatever. We have done a lot of work in document extraction and getting really good at understanding bank statement structure. All the major banks have slightly different statements, as you're aware of. And Digits now pulls the transactions from the statement, automatically reconciles each account. And the magic of it is we reconcile to a pixel bounding box on the statement. And so you can literally click on the transaction and see it on the statement and vice versa.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really...
That's the power of AI, right? It's like, it's so tedious. No human would ever do that.
But you need to be able to click through and to see exactly where on the PDF we're mapping to. That's always been the issue with these AI reconciliations is how do I trust it?
Exactly. 100%.
Okay. Yep. So can I ask you a really nerdy question about how you're doing these reconciliations? So one of the fundamental differences between Xero and QuickBooks is how they handle reconciling. QuickBooks allows you to clear transactions and then you can reconcile them by doing a month-end report where you reconcile. For a long time, Xero didn't have that. They just do a one-to-one match. So how does Digits approach the transaction matching aspect of reconciliation?
So that's a really interesting question. So we match the transaction to the statement. So the status of each transaction is captured, right? Mm-hmm. Does that transaction match the statement? Then at the period level or whatever time interval you set, you basically, it's like, does the full reconciliation tally with what's in the ledger? And then that portion is marked closed.
And it's locked, like these transactions.
Exactly.
That's always the issue, right? The big problem is we reconcile and then we delete a transaction or somebody messes with it.
Correct. So the key thing is, you're right. So basically, once it's reconciled, once you close it, that is locked. We do, of course, allow you to manually override the lock if you need to for some reason. In that case, the reconciliation will automatically reopen, and it shows in our UI why it reopened, as in this transaction was deleted, this transaction was added, whatever it might be.
Okay. Reporting.
Yes.
How is it different, the same than QuickBooks or Xero for reporting? How does Digits handle reporting?
Yes. So our goal with reporting was, this is your opportunity to storytell. You want to bring all the data together as easily as possible to tell each client what they need to be focused on. And I always felt, as a sort of serial entrepreneur, I felt really confused and constrained by what I was getting from my accountant, because it would just be the standard Excel export of here's your P&L, balance sheet, etc. And I wanted like visualizations. I'm very visual. I wanted to sort of understand the business. So we went and built what I would call Google Docs for finance. So Digits reports are live in browser, fully customizable. You can change the cover photo, titles, et cetera, et cetera. you can drag and drop any graph or component into the report. So let's say you want to deep dive on marketing spend. You literally just type marketing, MARK, and drag it into your report. And you get a graph of your marketing spend.
That's beautiful.
It's very cool. And so
Yeah.
you can tell a story to a client in seconds just by drag and dropping a couple components in. And then, of course, we do have the full traditional P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, aging reports, et cetera, et cetera. All of those do the flux analysis for you. And so you can just turn on the color coding and it highlights what changed and by how much. And then we also automatically do insight detection on each line. So it's like, why did marketing jump 20%? Well, you don't need to go run a different detail report. You just mouse over. It's a feature we call hover to discover. And it tells you, oh, it spiked because of an increase with X. And so we do vendor and customer level attribution. You can see the top transactions that resulted in the delta from the prior month, et cetera, et cetera.
That's great because I think variance analysis was the most time consuming aspect of
Yes.
what I did when I was in client accounting services. It's just so tedious to pull up the GL detail and to try to figure out what it was that was different.
Completely agree.
So-
And this is actually a funny note for you. This is not AI. It is fascinating to me how many startups there are claiming like we do AI FP&A and like bring up your variance analysis and so on. We do not use any AI for this. Variance analysis is statistical analysis, and we just do brute force stats over the entire data set for the month and surface it. And computers are really good at crunching a lot of numbers very fast.
Well, and it makes sense because what AI is statistical
Yep.
and variable. And we want our variance analysis not to be variable. We want it to be deterministic.
Correct. I met a founder a few months ago, I won't say the name, who told me she was building an AI FP&A dashboard. And she was really excited because it was 98% right. And my reaction was, that's useless.
Yeah.
Like if it's not 100% correct, what's the point?
Yes. We were just talking about this on the accounting podcast, David Leary and I, where it has to be like 99.9%. We're talking, or 100%.
It should just be 100%.
It should be 100%.
The math has to be correct.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the other big things we've done with Digits is we fundamentally don't use LLMs that much. And when we do have to use them, we prevent them from doing math. And so instead, we built our own financial modeling engine that we give to the LLMs as a tool. They can request to do math, and it's done in our financial modeling engine, so we can guarantee it's correct.
That's the right approach, is you use the LLMs to like drive the tools, to use the calculator, to evaluate the output of the calculator, but not to actually do calculations.
Exactly correct.
Just like people, right? We don't expect, you don't give me a complex math problem and expect me to solve it perfectly every time, unless I'm a human calculator, but there aren't that many human calculators around there, right? There's very few. Yeah. It's funny to me, just side note, Jeff, I'm curious about your thoughts on this. The more I explore AI, generative AI, the more I come to realize that it is, to effectively use it, you have to think of it like it's a person.
Yes, 100%. And right now, basically a junior employee.
Yes.
And so give your junior employee all the tools and all the context they need to do a good job. And don't assume they can do something that they obviously can't do.
The phrase we've been using a lot in accounting, I feel like, is a clever intern.
Yeah, 100%.
Because we have a lot of interns that come into accounting firms and they have knowledge that they've acquired in school, but they have no practical experience.
Correct.
And so when you hand a task to an LLM, it lacks context, it lacks real world experience. You get an output that's very similar to a clever intern.
It's a very, very eager, very overconfident, clever intern.
I went to a really good school.
Yes.
Paid a lot for that education, and that thinks a lot of its abilities. Yes.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay, let's talk about the accounting agents. We're in the current hype cycle of accounting agents, or just AI agents in general. And of course, it's getting hype in the accounting space. There's all this talk about it. Of course, every time something comes along like this, will it take our jobs?
Right.
It will totally automate all of this work. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on just AI agents in general in our space. And then after that, let's talk about like how you're doing it at Digits because you had a big announcement about this.
Yeah, let me first just say what they are, because I think they're also caught up in this whole hype wave. And it drives me crazy because of course crypto was big and every company had crypto. And then AI is big and every company has AI. And now agents are big and every company has agents. And it's largely just sort of hype. The reality here is what is the difference between an LLM, which now folks are generally familiar with ChatGPT, and an agent? An agent is simply an LLM that you run in a loop. And so you give it a task, the LLM attempts to do the task. You then ask it at the end, did you complete the task? If not, what are the next steps? And then it says, okay, here's what I did well, here's what I didn't do well, here's what's next. And then boom, the loop continues. And so it runs in the loop until it believes it's completed the task. And this is a relatively simple mechanic that can have sort of profound behavioral like benefits, and like it can achieve some very interesting things. But as we were just saying, it's not going to do anything that you don't give it the context or tools to accomplish. And so the prime example in Digits, we are pretty sure we were the first in the accounting industry sort of at all to run agents. We've been running them in production since January of 2024, so almost 2 years now. And their first task was exactly what I described, Googling transactions that our system didn't know about. And they do it actually shockingly well. And they do it with less human bias than many of you would, because they don't have just this instinct of, oh, I've seen that transaction before, it has to be X, and I'm just going to do a quick search and then like book it. They're thorough every single time. And they never get tired, and they research them 24/7. And it does drive remarkable accuracy. So that was our first one. And then the second one is this reconciliations, which we spoke about. Reconciliation is a very tedious sort of looping process. You want to go through all of the transactions, find the best match for each one in order to reconcile the books. And so that's how we think about them. We try to use them in tedious work where it's not really a time-bounded project. Like it just needs to figure out this transaction. It needs to figure out how to reconcile this statement. And that's what they're great at.
And you mentioned the human in the loop aspect where you're surfacing the low confidence transactions to a human to review it,
Yep.
approve it, or change it. I assume with the reconciliations, it works that way too.
It's exactly the same. So if it does achieve the reconciliation, you actually have the choice of whether it should sort of auto finalize it, or you as the accountant still want to review it and finalize it. That's a choice in the product. Obviously, if it doesn't successfully reconcile it, it's immediately surfaced for your review. And so you'll open it and it'll be 90x% done and matched, and you can see all the pixels align. And then you'll have to help it figure out what it couldn't get.
Mm-hmm. Just like one of my human bookkeepers.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. What about like other? So we've got researching transactions. We've got reconciling transactions or reconciling statements.
Yep.
What other agent use cases are you excited about, working on? What are you hoping to automate with agents?
Yeah, so just like QuickBooks, Digits does offer full bill pay and invoicing built in. So it makes it very easy to migrate clients over. And they're already relatively automated. So you upload a bill, you drag and drop it onto Digits, and we extract everything, including the line items. And it's remarkable because they're way more accurate than the old OCR approaches everyone's familiar with. And so you can just click on the bill, look at it, click approve, or send it to the client, approve, click pay, etc. What we're really excited about, and this is not in yet, but sort of development, is thinking through how we automate collections and nudging the recipient to pay, and like how do they manage the ARAP process for you? Because it's the same thing, right? If you have a clever intern who you've set to do ARAP ops for someone, we can look at those processes and sort of guide an agent to take those steps.
So getting approvals on bills, following up for those approvals,
following up, nudging. Yep.
Because that was always probably the most day-to-day time-consuming task that we did was that. But that totally seems like something an agent could do because, like you said, it just runs in a loop. And its objective might be get the appropriate approvals.
Right.
On
get
this
approved,
bill.
Get paid, whatever it might be. Yeah.
And so you just have to teach it, well, like you would an employee. Okay, how often should I follow up with somebody?
Right.
So I don't annoy them too much, right? Obviously not every hour.
Right.
Maybe maybe once every few days, and then it starts to get urgent, and then every day.
Right. And it's like start very polite and gentle and then maybe
Uh-huh.
get a little more direct in the emails.
So how much are you allowing Digits users to customize those agent instructions? Because that's something that, as I build my own agents, I'm very
Mhm.
aware that the instructions can really change how the agent behaves.
Definitely. Yes.
So how much are you hard coding on your side, and how much are you exposing to the users?
So I don't want to tip our hand on our team of a upcoming announcement, but there will be a lot of customization options for our accounting firm partners. And
Got
so
it.
Digits will ship with sort of a default behavior, but we are going to let the firms pretty thoroughly customize how the agents operate.
I love that. It's always good to give people a default setting and then
Hmm.
allow them to customize.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's the difficulty of building a product, right? Is like, how do you keep it simple but also make it complex enough for all use cases in accounting, especially. That's
This is one
like
of the hardest parts. So I
yeah,
way 20 years ago I started my career as an engineer at Apple. And I love basically opinionated design, right? You want to take a stance, the product should stand for something, but you do need to strike the balance because if you can't customize what's important, it's not going to fit everyone's use case and they're not going to like it. And so that's probably what we spend most of our product design time on is the right balance of exposing features versus not adding complexity to the UI.
it's funny you said Apple because that's exactly what I was thinking of, where a very non-technical, non-tech savvy user can pick up an Apple device and it just works and the default
Yep.
behavior is great for them. But
Yep.
then somebody who's a little bit more sophisticated like you or I can go in and tweak these settings.
That's exactly right. And this is what I tell our team. Like my goal is to build the sort of accounting's platform that Apple would if they ever did that. Apple's never going to build accounting software, but imagine they did, what could we build?
Let's talk about trust, security. This is always a question I get every AI presentation I do, every time I go out in person and talk or on a webinar. How are you approaching the security of sending data to LLMs, of the models you're building? One of the fundamental differences of Digits that you've just talked about is that the database is structured so that you can learn from all the companies
Yep.
and it's not siloed.
Yep.
So, how do you maintain security in that environment?
Yes, this has been our major engineering effort over the 7 years of the company. So, as quick background, this is my third tech startup. I was previously head of consumer product at Twitter. Our team has worked at Twitter and Google at immense scale. We have basically architected the entire system for this because it's so important. And so, what we do, all of our data is encrypted at rest in Iowa. We use Google Cloud, we host everything in Iowa. It does not leave our systems. And this is the big difference between Digits and other players in the space. We train our own models. And so we are not sending raw data to OpenAI, to these third party foundation models. We are not letting them train on the data. Everything I talked about, we've trained in house. And so that's been really fundamental to us. That allows us to get really specific. So we use something that's called object per object envelope encryption. What that means is each object in our system is encrypted with its own key. And so even like heaven forbid we get hacked, you can't just like steal a key and steal all the data. You'd have to steal n keys for each object in the system. So it goes really, really deep. And we developed these approaches at my prior company, Crashlytics, where we were basically doing mobile crash detection for all of the major apps in the world. Crashlytics runs on 6 billion smartphones. And so we had really sensitive data. Like we knew Uber's DAU, MAU, all this public company data that was not
Right, because you're
public.
collecting logs for every app. Like
Exactly.
this is everything.
That was the keys to their kingdom. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
So
so we've taken the
okay.
same approaches here.
Well, that's great. So yeah, and at Twitter, I mean, everybody's like DMs.
Yes,
You know, from a
we're
security
also
standpoint.
encrypted under
Yeah.
my watch. They previously weren't. When I was head of product, we started encrypted DMs.
Okay, that's great to hear. And the audit trail, right? It's
Yes.
important that it's secure. That if there's a leak or a hack or whatever, that it's locked down, like you said. Um, Well, but we also need to be able to see what happened and why it happened. Audit trails are super important to accountants. How are you
Yep.
approaching that when it comes to these agents doing the work? When it comes to auto categorization, like if something gets auto categorized, how do I know what happened?
Great question. So everything is logged and recorded within Digits. You can click on a transaction and see the activity log, see who edited that transaction when. So this solves the common issue of like, no one loves having their clients in QuickBooks because you don't really know what they're doing. In Digits, it's very clear what's happened. And we have restricted roles, so you can just have view only access. In Digits, you can actually do per object access. What I mean by that is like you could invite your head of marketing and they only see your marketing expense category. They don't see payroll, they don't see your bank accounts, anything else you deem sensitive. So it's very locked down.
See, that's impossible to do in a traditional GL. So you're saying I could invite somebody and they could just see everything to do with marketing,
Yep.
including all the transactions, everything
Yeah.
that's been tagged
So
as.
so imagine this, right? Like you're used to saying, "Oh no, we're over our marketing budget." Why? Well, we didn't find out to the end of the month and we didn't know where we were and so on. With Digits, you can give them live access to marketing expenses and remember it's booked 24/7 as transactions come in. So there's no excuse. And yeah, they can see marketing, they can see all the transactions booked to marketing and nothing else.
I love that.
So yeah, to finish your question, so we've taken the security extremely seriously. It's SOC 2 Type 2 certified. You can go to trust.digits.com and get all the details. And so yeah, happy to answer any questions from anyone with concerns there. We've taken that extremely seriously.
Let's talk about moving clients to Digits. First, actually, I want to ask you about taking on Intuit
Yes.
because that I cannot imagine a more ambitious goal than to try to take business from Intuit, which is, I think it still stands as the only multi-billion-dollar company that has been built on like direct to small business
Correct.
software as a service. There are very few, and they have done it, and they just dominate. They are 80-90% market share.
Yep.
Zero tried to come to the US after being very well established in Australia and New Zealand and has struggled to even get 10% market share. And here you are, Digits.
Yep.
I mean, you have this incredible background, Twitter and Crashlytics, Apple, all that. But still, it's like it's you're a David against a Goliath, or you're a
Definitely.
like they are a giant. Remember when they had those commercials with the giant robots? Like that's
Yes.
so. I just want to ask you about that. Uh, why go after this giant? And you know, it just seems so challenging. Like to accountants are just like stuck on QuickBooks.
Yeah, it is a really great question. And all credit to Intuit. I mean, they have built a truly impressive business over many decades now. And so that was hard by all means. I would say what got me very sort of obsessed with this space. Remember, I had no background in finance or accounting. I was building developer tools, we were doing consumer product at Twitter. I got so frustrated by the difference in data quality between the product engineering side and the business side. And so in product and eng, we have Google Analytics, Grafana, A/B testing dashboards, log analysis. Like you know exactly what your servers are doing, whatever users doing in real time as it happens. And then as the business owner, I was waiting 2 to 3 weeks to get a black and white P&L, an Excel sheet from our accountant. And so at first I thought that was just a small business issue and like big companies had it sorted out. And then at Twitter, I literally went to corporate finance and I was like, oh, I want to run an event for our consumer org. What's the budget? And their actual answer was, oh, we haven't run those books yet. Can you give us 3 weeks? And I was like, you have 100 people in corporate finance. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so that was literally the seed. And so when I left Twitter, I was like, I need to figure out what's going on. Talked with tons of business owners, spoke with tons of accountants, and I realized the problem was not the people. Everyone is very aligned on like wanting the data. The problem was the software. And so what I saw was an opportunity to disrupt the status quo because of the tech transition. And so like each of my companies have sort of ridden a tech wave. My first company in Creo back in 2007, 08 was basically Web 2.0 document collaboration. we built the first capability to render files in a web browser. We ended up getting acquired by Box, and our tech powered Box's document display for years. With Crashlytics, it was the rise of mobile and apps were crashing. And we could tell you literally in 2 seconds what line number of code you had to fix. And then at Twitter, as head of product, I launched the algorithmic timeline, which was one of the world's first global deployments of ML, now called AI. And so I
And,
understood the
and for our
power.
listeners, like the reason that's a big deal is because previously the timeline was like just it was whatever was most recent.
Correct. It was just strict
Yeah.
chronological. Right.
And
Exactly.
and the algorithmic timeline like changed everything because now it's surfacing the stuff that it thinks will be most interesting to you.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
that's what really I mean, I
And
feel like Twitter really took off after that.
both Twitter and Facebook did at
Yeah.
roughly the same time. Exactly. And in social media, it has great power. It also has great problems that it causes.
Yep.
I helped make the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, to sort of explain all the downsides. And so I was looking for a business I could go into that used machine learning, but had no downsides. And I figured if we automate accounting, like that would be amazing. Like then we could have a live finance dashboard. And so that was the premise. And yes, you're going head to head versus Intuit versus this monstrous company. But I felt that as a startup, we could move a lot faster with a brand new tech stack and basically literally code the architectural advantage into the core of the product.
And that's really the thing that Intuit can't change.
Correct.
They are stuck on that 30-year-old code base.
Yes.
Well, in the case of QuickBooks Online, I guess it is like 30 years old. They haven't
It
changed
is.
it.
And here's an example for you. As you know, in QuickBooks, you can't have a vendor and a customer with the same name,
Right.
right? Why? Because they apparently chose name as the primary key in their database.
Ooh, big mistake. I mean, they should have known better,
Exactly.
right?
So those are the
Use a
things that
unique
are
ID and obscure that behind the scenes, right?
exactly. Those are the type of things that are just incredibly hard to change. That'll be a
Yeah.
year's refactor.
Oh, I mean, to do that across, I mean, how many businesses? How many of these little databases do they have? Like to
That
actually make that
Yeah, they
change?
likely have one monster database, but
Oh,
who knows?
okay.
I don't know their internal architecture. Yeah,
I always assumed that was the issue because like that's why they've struggled to like do the categorization correctly.
that could be too. You're right.
Is there must be something architecturally that like prevents it because I think this is the problem where they have, every company has its own chart of accounts
Yep.
and there's no like unified chart of accounts. Like
Yep.
Xero tried to do this. They have a like higher level chart of accounts as a practice that you can map all your clients to,
Yep.
but it takes a lot of work. I
Yep.
assume that like your vector graph data model just like does that.
That's what it does natively.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Is
so
is
that's really our secret sauce. Like you've probably heard of some hype. There's a whole bunch of YC startups trying to do AI accounting and so on.
yeah.
But when you look at what they're doing, they have a standard chart of accounts, which they then send to GPT.
Yeah, you have to be able to have the customization. All right, Jeff. So let's talk about getting clients onto Digits from QuickBooks.
Yes.
So, what is the ideal client in my firm to try with Digits to pilot?
So we support a wide range of clients. To get the most sort of impressive first time experience, I would start with one of your simpler digital clients, right? Relatively consistent books month to month. You should be able to see it almost fully automated almost immediately. Digits has two modes. You can obviously start fresh with Digits, and you can either upload a chart of accounts if you want, or Digits will actually suggest a chart of accounts and build it as it sees transactions come in. So that's sort of a cool option
Ooh,
if you have a brand new client.
yeah, that's really nice.
This is, I should have mentioned another thing the agent does. It can literally look at your transaction feed as it comes in and build the chart of accounts up from nothing
Oh,
based on how
wow.
it thinks those should be booked.
That's always one of the most tedious aspects of starting with a new client is trying to figure out what is my chart of accounts. I have to take them. I would take a big template that I built
Yep.
with hundreds of accounts, and then I would have to whittle it down for that particular client.
So
But
under the covers, yeah, the agent's actually doing the opposite. It's starting with a massive list, and instead of whittling it down, it's just turning them on.
I love that.
But of course, so that's for brand new folks. For folks coming from Digits, you can bring in all their data right in the add client flow, and it takes 2 to 5 minutes. Super fast.
What about pricing for firms? Like how do you? One of the big complaints is actually the pricing of QuickBooks.
Yep.
Like it just keeps going up every year,
Yes.
and you hear accountants griping about it because,
Yep.
well, we're not doing anything more with it, but the price is
Yep.
going up. So, like, how are you competing on price?
So Digits is simple. It's $100 a month. We launched with that price back in March. We're not changing that price. I don't like pricing games. That's why it's not $99 a month. It's just $100
Hmm.
a month. And we do have volume discounts for accounting partners. So we have a full accounting partner program. You can get in touch with our team. We'll give you discounts based on your client count, etc. We also have additional SKUs. If you, for folks like just your write-up clients, you only do taxes for. We have a ledger-only SKU. If you have clients that for some reason you only want to do reporting for, we have a SKU for that. So basically, come chat with our team and we'll work with you. But the core Digits plan, $100 a month, super easy.
And how are you seeing firms that are moving clients onto Digits pricing their packages of offerings for their clients?
This is a really great question. We've seen a couple different models work. So what we've seen over the past just years in general is firms moving towards more of a fixed pricing model, which is great for automation because then obviously as it gets more automated, you as the firm save time and can serve more clients. We've also seen folks do a sort of a hybrid model where the monthly close is a fixed fee, and then they do per hour advisory work on top of that. I think both work great. If you're charging purely per hour right now, then the automation may make that challenging for you because the whole goal is it does whittle down your hours over time.
So, on that note, how do you see AI changing staffing at firms? I think we hinted at it with this accounts payable agent ID idea.
Yeah.
There's not many firms that employ people who just do accounts payable. I guess some larger ones do, but what jobs are going away? Is that one of them? Any others? What do you see growing? What do you see shrinking?
Yeah, totally. So I guess first off, high level, there is no world in which AI quote replaces accountants. That is crazy to me, knowing how the tech works. As we talked about, it is purely probabilistic. It will continue to get tricked by edge cases, et cetera, et cetera. There is a world where it does automate 90+%. Now we're at 96% of the bookkeeping tedium. And so I do think the sort of junior bookkeeping roles won't be that productive for that long. What we really see is firms already sort of trying to do this is whether they have already outsourced a lot of that roles, they're already sort of up leveling their team towards advisory work. I think that trend will continue. This will accelerate that. And it'll allow you to sort of shift into more of a review mindset across the board. What gets me really excited is if you talk with junior folks, people like still in college, debating whether to join the profession, I think this actually makes the profession far more attractive, right? Because you don't want to just sit there doing data entry all day long. You want to help learn how to advise businesses. And I think this will create a faster path to that.
What do you think about education? What should accountants be learning when it comes to AI? There's so much. Whenever I
Yes.
go out and talk to them, they're overwhelmed. You and I, we live in this. We play with it every day. But if you're a typical accountant or firm owner, you don't have a
Yep.
lot of time. Like
Yep.
where would you say they should focus?
So it is definitely overwhelming, even for folks who are in the space. The key thing is I would be disciplined at trying new tools and set aside some time each month. Obviously, like during the close, it's a nightmare, but set aside a couple days the week after you've sort of finished your monthly close to try a new crop of tools and see what could be helpful for you. And the reason I say that is no one's going to be sort of outcompeted by the AI itself. You are going to be outcompeted by firms that really adopt this aggressively and sort of bring that future forward. And so I would just be really eager to try as many things as you can find and start with your simpler clients, start with your sort of more tech forward, risk taking clients, and see how much of their process you can automate. And we know from our internal data, it is like 96% is straightforward. That's our median now. You can get to 100% automation for a really simple client. And so I would challenge everyone, pick one client on your firm and try to go that path and see what you can achieve.
Yeah, just start small. Start with one, give it a
Yep.
try. I also recommend watching YouTube. You can learn so much on YouTube. I learned how to swim watching like real, I mean, I knew how to swim
But
from
like
like taking,
impressive swimming.
yeah,
Okay.
like to actually like, like swim fast. I watched YouTube videos, and there's all these incredible Australian swimmers out there just giving
Wow.
away knowledge online, and they have underwater cameras, and like it's incredible. And that's just one example. I
Yep.
wanted to learn about AI agents, so I went on YouTube and I just started searching, okay, AI agents, AI agents in accounting, but you can also just learn about them in general. You just have to
I
be
love it.
careful because there's a lot of hype also
Right.
on YouTube. So you have to try to find the channels that are less about hype and more about real stuff.
Yep.
But it's like it's all out there. I mean, you can learn anything now, and you can actually learn it by asking, a large language model. You can
Right.
use ChatGPT to like learn stuff now.
Just be skeptical because remember, it
Yeah,
is a clever intern.
right. It's gonna guess. I like to think of it too as like I have a 10-year-old,
Hmm.
and he hallucinates all the time. So it's sort of like it's like that's actually a natural thing that we
Oh,
do
definitely.
is like
Yes.
our brains, we don't know the answer necessarily, but we have like an idea of the answer. And
Yep.
so we'll do our best, and sometimes it's right, and sometimes it's a little bit right, and sometimes it's totally off. But it goes back to that idea that AI is really modeled after human intelligence.
It is
And
remarkably so. So I have a 2 year old, and
okay.
he's obviously just learning to talk, just learning to identify things. And he saw a fish a few months ago. He's now obsessed with fish. But I've been shocked by how he can recognize just the head of a fish, just the tail of a fish, this shaped fish, this other weird shaped fish. And he knows they're all fish. And you can sort of
Yes.
think, like, see his mental model expanding.
Yeah. Yeah, children are building a mental model
Yep.
of the world, and it's that's I think that's what's hard about AI is that all previous tech innovations have worked fundamentally differently.
Correct.
In learning how to code is like all the how am I saying am I help me say this right. It's like zeros and ones, right? True and
Hmm.
false. That's been the foundation of all tech
So the
up to this
big
point.
difference, yeah, up until now, so all coding in history has been telling the computer what to do. You're basically writing the rules. Now with machine learning, you are simply giving it the goal state and it is figuring out what to do to get there. That's the like crazy mental model
Hmm.
difference.
And it's so exciting. It's so great to talk to you, Jeff.
No, thank you. This has been amazing.
It's been very educational. So yeah, everyone listening, give Digits a try. Jeff, where should accountants go to learn more about Digits?
So go to digits.com, super easy. You can literally start a free trial, add one of your simple clients, or if you just want to see the magic happen, sign up for an account, link your personal credit card, and it'll auto categorize your credit card. That's probably the fastest way to just like see the AI work. And then, of course, you can cancel the trial. But then if you click on our accountants tab, we have a full partnership program. Our team would love to speak. We can obviously get you discounted pricing, get your clients set up, help train your team, et cetera, et cetera.
I have been speaking with Jeff Seibert, co-founder and CEO of Digits. Jeff, thanks so much for your time.
Blake, this was awesome.